Recently, the Canton Repository has been a non-stop propaganda mill for the passage of Issue 1, which is a permanent tax increase for 16 Stark County school districts. They ran a Q&A article in which common questions about this new tax hike were fielded. I picked a few of the more important questions and provided my personal take on the answers that were given. First question was, how would the levy money be used? Their answer was, all levy proceeds from Issue 1 must be used to fund safety, security, and mental health issues for the 16 participating school districts. Some of the objectives it would fund include hiring additional school resource officers and mental health personnel for school buildings, implementing a digital citizenship and education program, for example, social media education and anti-bullying programming, crisis management, including updated alert systems and hardware and software upgrades as recommended by the Stark County School Safety and Security Task Force. Additional information on how the money would be spent can be found at www.saferschoolsaferstudents.com, which is a site set up in support of the levy. In other words, the unapproved list of things that this money could not be used for could possibly be shorter than the approved list. The outline provided by the website they mentioned seems to have lots of broad and ambiguous categories. It's very possible and likely that schools will be able to simply move money around within their budgets and use accounting tricks to absorb this extra money into their everyday spending as time progresses. The next question was, who would ensure the money is spent the way districts say it would be spent? Their answer was, the Ohio Auditor's Office would oversee how the money is spent and conduct audits to ensure it is used for safety and mental health issues as required by state law. In other words, just trust the government to oversee itself and how it spends your money. A wise man once said, nobody spends someone else's money as carefully as he spends his own. Next question. Why a continuing levy instead of one that could be reviewed at regular intervals, say every 3 to 5 years? Their answer, according to Educational Service Center officials, the need to provide a safe and secure learning environment is our most important priority. By making this continuing, districts can implement and plan appropriately, knowing that resources will be there to ensure they are as safe as reasonably possible. In other words, we don't want voters to be able to rescind this levy if it fails to do all the things we promised them it would. We're using raw fear to fast-track this levy through by using your intense concern for the safety of your children as cover. The next question is, how much would each district pay and receive back? What can you say about those receiving less than they pay? Their answer is, the amount each district's voters would pay is based on property valuations, as determined by the Stark County Auditor's Office. The amount each district would receive is based on enrollment at $225 per student. Plain Local School District have a combined property valuation of $985.5 million and would contribute $1.46 million toward the levy. Based on enrollment numbers, Plain Local would receive $1.4 million. Sandy Valley Local has a combined property valuation of $165 million and would contribute $246,098 to the levy and receive $317,146 based on enrollment. Each district's contribution and proceeds vary. The levy would generate $9.5 million for more than 42,000 students in the participating districts. Typically in county-wide levy issues, areas such as Jackson and Plain Townships pay more than other areas because home valuations exceed the county average there. In other words, this is a giant redistribution scheme. Voters in most city and poorer districts who are told they will gain more resources than they put in will be more likely to vote this issue through. It's also interesting how the repository words this. They say, the levy would generate $9.5 million for more than 42,000 students in the participating districts. Now, how nice that sounds, that money is just generated out of thin air. If they were being honest, they would say the levy would extract $9.5 million from area homeowners and transfer it to the coffers of various local government agencies. The next question, if a majority of voters in my school district vote this levy down, would we still pay the tax if the levy passes countywide? Their answer is yes. Voters in the 16 participating districts are voting as one combined unit. The overall results determine the outcome. It passes or fails for all 16 together. In other words, we've organized 16 school districts into a giant collective in order to have a better chance of getting this funding out of wealthier areas of the county who may not vote for this in their own district because of the negative return on investment. The next question was, what are you doing to promote the issue? Do you feel like voters are aware of the issue? Their answer was, a website has been established at www.saferschoolsaferstudents.com to inform people of Issue 1. There have been multiple stories in local news media, particularly the Canton Repository and its sister papers, and there have been community meetings in districts with superintendents and administrators. Also, all participating districts held public meetings where Issue 1 was discussed. In other words, any and all views sympathetic to this tax hike have been featured front and center by a compliant news media, while dissenting views have largely been either suppressed or ignored. Community meetings run by people who will directly benefit from the influx of cash extracted from property owners have told attendees all the amazing things that they'll be able to achieve if they could just get more of your money. Since school officials and many people deeply involved in the school systems who attend these meetings view those who don't agree with this approach as selfish misanthropes who hate children, dissenters don't tend to show up at the meetings, as there's very little accomplished by doing so. Next question. Who pays the expense of putting this levy on the ballot? The answer? Each school district contributed a share of the ballot expense to the Stark Educational Service Center, and the ESC served as a pass-through to the Board of Elections for the ballot expense. Districts contributed based on their enrollment. The total cost incurred will be about $300,000. In other words, you are paying extra to hold this special election, rather than simply adding it to the upcoming November election, which would be a cheaper option. But you didn't have a say over that, did you? The last question was, why should voters support Issue 1? Their answer? The Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Ohio Department of Health have determined the mental health issues represented by the local student population is a contagion, one of the worst on record. This spreading of a harmful idea or practice is unlikely to end without some intervention, ESC officials said. The well-being of our youth is something all community members have a vested stake in, Shattuck said. This is not a political or a religious issue, but rather a concern we all share and need to support. Our nation's children are our greatest asset and our most precious treasure. Well, who could disagree with that? In other words, more government agencies who will be given more funding and control within the school system are making their best case for why they need an additional $9.5 million of your hard-earned cash. And they will not hesitate to use the fear they know you feel in your heart to loosen your grip on your wallet. It's not even an afterthought to any of these agencies that their approach may not work. It's just assumed that shoveling money at this problem will make it go away, and that your wise and honest politicians and government agencies know what's best for your children. Well, do they?